Welcome, world, to Life, Love, and Wellness Global, a worldwide wellness movement. I am Reverend Sandy Rogers, and as the creator of this historic event, it is my pleasure to welcome you. We come together to bring you this historic event. We have practitioners, holistic practitioners. We have medical doctors. We have spiritual individuals. This event is so lovingly dedicated to my mother, Mrs. Barbara Dean Brown. And my mother taught me like 40 plus years ago about the importance and the meaning behind herbs. And she would always say, we don't know what they putting in those pills, so you better not, get hooked on prescription drugs. And so we listened to Mom, but not all of us paid attention. My sister, bless her heart, was diagnosed recently thereafter with asthma, and she was prescribed prednisone, which is a very powerful steroid. And my sister actually got hooked on steroids, like someone out on the street kind of hooked, like on heroin or crack or something like that. And so my mom and my sister are both on the other side, living in the other dimension, but they're upholding me, and this is dedicated to their memory. So we don't want to come and make you change your mind about what you're doing. We just want to provide information to you, something different, so that you have options to choose from, so that you're not stuck. Because the environment that we now live in, the fast foods, the toxins in the air that we breathe and in the water that we drink, and the processed foods, and all of that is causing havoc on this precious body temple. So God created our bodies to heal themselves, but they can only heal themselves when they're fed and they're nourished and they're stress-free. And so the 60 or so or more experts that we have are bringing you this worldwide wellness movement in an attempt to share their testimonies and their information with you. So we have from age 14 on up. I don't even know what the oldest age is. I think 88 or something. So you see, that's a wide range of knowledge that we're bringing you. And so we hope that you come and that you get all the knowledge that you need to affect a positive change on your life, and share this with others. It's free, it's online, and so we're just so thankful that you decided to be a part of our listening community, the viewing community, and we certainly appreciate you for giving us your time of day and your energy and your efforts to being with us and to being a part of this historic event. We have pulled together people of color for you, by you, right? So we want to make sure that you understand that we too, melanated people with color, can enjoy, practice, and participate in some of these modalities that others have been doing for centuries, and that is pretty new to our community. So we talk about Qigong, we talk about meditation, yoga, spiritual work from a different perspective than religion. So we talk about the spirituality aspect. We talk about abuse in the families. We talk about all kinds of subjects because we know that in our communities there are layers and layers and layers and layers of stuff that we never talk about that's causing a negative effect on our bodies and its healing process. So we address it, whatever it is, and we hope that you will benefit from the many experts that we have, and that you walk away with lots of knowledge and lots of new information, and that you become fully empowered to share information with others. So thank you for being with us. We love you and we bless you, and we look forward to doing this again. But thanks for being here with the first one. We appreciate you.
Love and wellness. Life, love and wellness.
Welcome to Life, Love, and Wellness Global, a worldwide wellness movement. Today, it is our pleasure to welcome to the microphone Dr. Imani Ma'at. Dr. Ma'at, would you introduce yourself to the worldwide community, please?
It would be my pleasure. Dr. Sandy, thank you so much for having me. It is truly a pleasure to be a part of this series. I'm Dr. Imani Ma'at. I am a health educator, and I have pretty much blended my love and work with public health with poetry, haiku poetry in particular. And so most people, when they think of public health, they think of vaccines, maternal and child health, HIV prevention, epidemics, flu epidemics and so forth around the world. But there's so much more to public health. And as a health educator, I worked at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention here in Atlanta for 22 years as a health scientist, as a researcher, as an educator. We worked with health departments, community-based organizations, religious organizations, international organizations to provide funding, to provide technical assistance, to provide education. And so that has been sort of the backdrop for me for many, many years. And I love doing that work. And I also have loved writing poetry. All of my life I have enjoyed writing poetry and sort of writing it and then sort of putting it off in the corner somewhere, not even really putting my collection together. And I learned haiku poetry in elementary school. Haiku is an ancient Japanese form of poetry that uses just 3 lines, 17 syllables to tell a really big story. So I was introduced to it in elementary school, and I thought everybody had been introduced to it in elementary school. And I realized how fortunate I was in terms of the school system that I went to outside of New York City, in New Rochelle. However, at one point, and I've always loved teaching, at one point I took a Montessori training program in New York City, in Harlem actually, Champ Montessori program, and it was so good. And one of the things they taught was how to use haiku poetry in your teaching with the children. And I really, at that point, started writing it again and realized that there was a way to apply it. Once I got into public health, there was a way to apply it to stories and lessons learned and so forth in health and wellness. Not just, public health is the community level, the broader level, and doctors pretty much focus on individual health and wellness. So what I've done is sort of blend the whole thing. Let's look at what happens with the individual as well as the community, and let's use poetry to help reinforce stories. When I first started working with children and with schools, I would go into a setting and talk with it. Sometimes I'd bring djembe drums and shaker-rays and things, because the first thing I wanted to do was kind of to kindle their creativity. So they always enjoyed it, always laughed, had a good time, had fun. And I remember asking, and so I would have them, we'd talk about a health issue. I would do a PowerPoint up front to give some of the science and background about the issue. And I started evaluating the sessions because I wanted the feedback from the children and from the mentors and the teachers. What works, what doesn't work. I actually got a postdoc fellowship from Morehouse School of Medicine, University of Alabama, and Tuskegee to evaluate this series, which I call the Healthy Haiku series, education series. It actually won an award, so I call it my award-winning Healthy Haiku program. But I remember when I first started evaluating, one of the questions was, what did you like the most? What did you like the least? Would you recommend this to your friends? And I always got glowing reports, but the what did you like the least? PowerPoint. Hated it. And I was like, oh, the kids don't like PowerPoint. That's something I was doing professionally with adults. The kids are like, we don't need all of that. Let's just do the fun part. So I took out PowerPoints, and I do not do PowerPoints even for adults when I'm doing this workshop. So my goal is to make it fun. You know, health and wellness information can be very boring. You know, statistics and what you shouldn't do, what you should do. And when I go in with audiences, even with from the youngest child to the oldest, I make them the experts. I turn it over to them. Let's talk about nutrition. And I'll say, tell me some things that are healthy to eat. And they will mention, you know, the fruits, the apples, bananas, the tangerines, oranges, lemons, limes, pears, and then even the vegetables. They'll talk about, you know, eating, you know, kale and salads and avocados. I noticed one thing: the older the folks get, when I go from kindergarten to 4th grade, on the good list, they're trying to sneak in, can we put fried chicken on the list? No. Can we put pizza on the list? But I would turn it into a teachable moment. I said, because you're going to eat pizza anyway, so here's some things you can do to make your pizza healthier. And so we would talk about even vegan cheese. You can now get on in some pizza places, and putting on vegetables, putting the broccoli and so forth, instead of just cheese and pepperoni and all those things that are going to make you sicker. So I would use it as a teachable moment. And then, of course, we would brainstorm about the things that are not so healthy, and they were real clear about that. You know, they get right into the meats, the sugar, the salts, the things that they like to eat, the macaroni and cheese. They would always have a good list. And so under the good, the not so good, we would have consequences. What are the consequences of eating those things on the bad list, or eating too many of them, or too often? And they would say, well, you can get diabetes. It's amazing how smart children are. Kindergartners, you can get diabetes, you can get cancer, you'll become obese, you'll have trouble walking. They give you the whole list. And there's always one child that says, well, you know you could die. And I'm like, thank you, that completes our list. So we have this complete list on the board of words and phrases around good food, not so good food, and consequences of eating bad food. And from that, we start pulling off words and writing poetry. And so they take those phrases and those words and turn them into the haiku poetry, which is so easy. You know, I'm like 5 syllables on the first line, 7 syllables on the second, and 5 on the third. One person would start, and then they would just kind of create the story, and the story is very quick, but very powerful. And a lot of times I would share my poems with them. If they got stuck, I'd share some of my examples from the books that I've written 3 books now, and I'll talk about the third one, which is about childhood obesity. But they would, you know, again, take the words from the board, and I would encourage them to tell a story. You know, tell a good story, or tell a bad story, or tell a fun story about the things we've been talking about. And so I know for the very young ones, I would always encourage them to use color, vivid color and images, so that you can remember that story. There's one that my granddaughter and I wrote about eating a pear. I love to eat pears in my little blue rocking chair with my big brown teddy bear. And there's probably too many syllables in there. I don't know if we use brown, but you get the picture of the pear, the blue rocking chair, the teddy bear, and that child is going to remember about eating pears and how much joy it brings to them. There's a section that in my first book we did on violence. And there's a poem that I wrote that says, when he pulled back his fist, he stared at the lifeless face of his best friend. And so you can just see it, and you can feel the pain in that. Almost 2 weeks after writing that particular poem, I saw that on the 6 o'clock news, how 2 kids who were best friends got into a brawl. One of them hit the other in the temple and killed him. And so it becomes a discussion around alternatives to violence, alternative ways of resolving conflict and disputes, better ways of thinking, better options for just living. In fact, that's the name of the program that I'm managing at the county jail program. It's called Options for Living and Learning, where I actually have taken this strategy, and I'm working with inmates, and I call them my students, not inmates. It just feels better. I mean, I know what they are and who they are, but I don't define them by their orange jumpsuits, because we've all made mistakes. We've all made decisions that were not in our best interest, and so, or out of desperation or out of fear. So myself and the other instructors who are there, you know, we try to bring them new options, new ways of looking at life, ways of expanding their lens around life so that they have more options. They have more stories that they can choose from in terms of resolving things that come up. One of the young guys that I have, couldn't have been more than 17 or 18, and he was telling his story of why he was there. And he says, well, you know, my parents were away, and it was just me and my younger siblings, and I had to feed them. So I had to steal food to feed them. And we're like, well, did you really have to steal food? You know, there are food pantries. There are so many places that could have helped you and your family, you know, in that moment. So we just look at ways of expanding. And so I really enjoy the haiku. Within my own program of the haiku, I've blended in lots of other topics like forgiveness, love, the Ho'oponopono, which is an ancient Hawaiian system of resolving conflicts. 4 statements: I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. I have everybody all over the jail saying the Ho'oponopono. And it's just so, you know, it's just so sweet. So I know that this work is changing lives, from the very young to older folks. Again, one of the reasons I decided to start working with adults was because I said, you know, you can do this work. You can teach children about nutrition, about not smoking, drinking, using drugs, and all of that. But if you're not working with the parents, especially the mothers, because the mothers are the primary nurturers, and they're the ones that do the food shopping for the most part. So I worked with the Center for Black Women's Wellness. I had a contract with them some years ago, and that was amazing. You know, we did the poetry, we did role play. You know, I give them a for instance, you know, and let them take it and run with it. And just seeing people learn about health and wellness in such a fun way. It doesn't feel like work. You know, once I started doing this, I sort of off and running, and it just never ever felt like work.
Yes.
The Ho'oponopono is an ancient Hawaiian strategy for resolving conflict at the individual and family and community level. And it's 4 statements. The basis of it is 4 statements, but it's a lot deeper than that. It's I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. And it's a mantra that you say to yourself to replace the negative thinking, the negative chatter. I should have done this, I could have done this, I'm so mad at myself for doing this, why didn't I do such and such, I'm so mad at her for. So instead of just that mindless chatter going on, you replace it with something positive. I love you. And talking to yourself, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. And so what it does is it really raises your vibration. And a lot of the work that I do, even with the haiku, is meant to help people to raise their vibration so that they can work and move more effectively in the society. So, and I've had amazing success with that in the jail, because that's someplace you want to give people tools to resolve conflict in a better way. So I've had, there was one woman, she was just so wonderful. She came in, she was so excited. She said, I used the Ho'oponopono. And I said, really, what did you do? She said, well, my daughter was trying to pick a fight with me. I was talking to her on the phone, and she said, I just stopped and said, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. And the daughter said, did you just say you love me? She says, yes, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. And guess what the daughter said in response? She said, I love you more. End of conflict. Because whatever the conflict was didn't compare to the love, which is why they are still connected in the first place. But people need to hear it. We don't say I love you that much to our loved ones because we're in such a fast-paced society. We're moving so fast, we're worrying about problems, and I imagine being in lockup in jail, it's hard to keep family stuff together. It's hard to keep your finances together. A lot of the problems just become insurmountable sometimes, and we turn on each other. You know, we turn on our family, we turn on the other inmates, you know, folks who are there. So this tool has really, I see bonding, I see mentorship with some of the older guys and the younger guys. You know, we always worry about abuse and you know, and people bullying and so forth in those settings. And I'm seeing like real friendships develop and real caring for each other. You know, I've seen grown men break down, tears, you know, because they had that Oprah Winfrey aha moment. It's like, wow, okay, this is amazing. And just the love just starts pouring out of them. You know, I had one guy, he was leaving. He had been one of my students, and I saw him progressing. He was one of those mentors that I spoke about. And he was in class on Monday. He called himself King. And I asked him one day, just kind of facetiously, I just want to hear him to say why he called himself King. He says, well, you know, I just want to be a role model for these younger brothers. I want them to know that there's a way out and that there's life after being here, and that this is just part of their journey. So I was leaving. That was on a Monday. On Friday, I was there for classes as well. And I was leaving. No, I was coming in. And somebody yelled at me, Ho'oponopono. And I'm like, what? And when I got out the car, I realized it was King. He had been released, and he was just coming in to handle some paperwork or something. But I was just it just brought me so much joy, you know, to see him on the outside, to have him remember the Ho'oponopono and the work that we had done together. So it's very, very, very powerful. So I've included Ho'oponopono in everything that I do in Healthy Haiku. It's kind of like Healthy Haiku meets Ho'oponopono. Who else is doing that, right? Healthy Haiku meets public health and wellness, and who else is doing that? So that's why I keep coming back to that. I do products, I do water, I do things to help build the body naturally, but I always come back to, but the Healthy Haiku is so important. You know, that's my gift to the world, if you will. And so the last book, and I mentioned it, the last book is called, it's here, Healthy Haiku 3, How to Fight Childhood Obesity, One Poem at a Time. And I love this piece because it's not a poetry book. It is very much an educational tool that teachers can use, parents can use. It does what I used to do in the PowerPoints. It has the science. It will tell you the percentage of people with diabetes. It will tell you the percentage of adults versus children. And one of the sad things is that the statistics, and because I worked at CDC, I'm very much into looking at the numbers. Well, 1 out of 3 adults is dealing with issues of being overweight and obesity. 1 out of 3 children is also at risk or, you know, dealing with issues of being overweight or being obese. That makes sense because we're all in the same families. And that's something that I have to remind children and even adults. We've somehow been conditioned or been taught that it's in our genes. So my aunt so-and-so has diabetes, my uncle so-and-so has diabetes, my grandmama has diabetes, my mama has diabetes, so I'm gonna get diabetes one day too. And I'm like, no, cancel. You're not. I said, a lot of what we're looking at are behaviors. So if we're eating the same food, we're not exercising, we're sitting on the couch and watching TV, then that's what runs in families. Habits run in families. So I've been telling even the youngest child, it's like, we're responsible for our health outcomes. Not the doctor, you know, not our teachers, not whoever is talking to us about these statistics. We have a choice of what we put in our mouth. That's why I had to work with the parents. Because the children are like, well, she does the shopping. She's the one that buys the soda. She's the one that's buying the potato chips and, you know, the other things that you're saying are not so good, Dr. Imani. So, you know, that's why I said this has to be a family project. And so even though this is not a children's book, this is a book for teachers, for educators, for mentors to work with children, to go over the things that lead to obesity, and then those outcomes that you know we don't want to think about, the things, the diseases the being ostracized by other children, being picked last for the softball team, being picked last to be participating in other sports and volleyball and so forth, just because you're overweight. So, you know, a lot of it affects self-esteem. You've got depression issues. You've got a lot of things that happen with very young children who are dealing with issues of obesity. So this is a really good reader for people who are interested in changing that trajectory in their family. You know, we have an opportunity to look at what we're eating, to make some different choices, even gradually. You know, start drinking alkaline water all day long. You know, add some lemon to your regular water. Whatever you're doing, take it to the next step. Take it to the next level. Make sure the children are drinking water and not juices with high fructose corn syrup, which is so bad for us. Not the sports drinks that are so bad and so acidic for us. You know, every year you hear about a child who drops dead on a playing field, you know, during playing football or soccer or something, and it's like unknown causes. They have no idea what happened, but they're giving them certain aids. I won't say their full name, but people know what I'm talking about. The sports drinks are very, very acidic, and you want to alkalize. Alkalizing is what's going to give them the energy that they need, give them the oxygen that they need to perform in these sports. So all of those issues are covered in here, and there's poetry about them. So I give examples of poetry that I've written about those topics, and then I also have spaces where they can write their own poetry. So if a parent picks this up, they can sit down and read it with their child, and they can write poetry together. You know, they can have a contest. You know, that's something that I like to do when I work with children. I'll have them in the room, and I'll have them split up, and they'll work either as teams or as individuals, and they'll come up with poetry about a particular health issue, and then they get up and present about it, which is great because it also addresses that other skill of being able to speak publicly and to stand in your power when you're speaking, not fidgeting and moving around and, you know, just wiggling and giggling and putting your hand here. It's like, no, stand in your power, put your hands down, speak clearly, speak slowly, speak loudly, so that people really understand what it is you're trying to share with them. And the guys at the jail love this. They're like, oh no, man, you can't do that in front of Dr. Ma'at. No, no, you have to stand still if you're speaking. And so it really just brings joy to my heart that this is having the kind of impact on so many aspects of the population. I'm working on an online training program so that I can teach people how to really use this work. It's one thing to pick it up and buy it, which I encourage everybody. It's on Amazon. Look up Healthy Haiku 3 and it pops right up. I encourage people to buy the book, but I also encourage you to get the training so that you can understand exactly what we do with the brainstorming, with the role play, with summarizing the highlights of lessons that are taught. It tells you how to teach the lessons and then how to use the haiku for them to give it back to you. In other words, yes, we've got this. You know, and you want to know when you've left the class that they really have it and they understand. And I always get glowing evaluations, even from the gentleman at the jail. There was one guy, and they always want to know about nutrition, and I always tell them, I know that you don't have a lot of choices in here, but you have families, you have people you're concerned about, you have parents, you have children. So I said, first of all, when you get out of here, the farmer's market's about a mile down the street. You know, so you want to go there and get lots of fresh fruits and veggies and organic produce and so forth. But I encourage them to think about what it is that they're eating and how that they can use this and how they can use this information later on. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. There's never enough time. Most of in the jail setting, the classes are 1 hour. And since I'm now managing that program that I had come in to volunteer to do one healthy haiku workshop, you see how the magic works? if it's something you're meant to do, it's like there's just this opening. The universe just supports you and says, oh no, yeah, you're going to teach there. They're going to pay you. And then in a couple of months, the woman who's running the program is going to leave. So that's your position. And I'm like, oh, if we're going to have the crystal ball to show us what, you just kind of laugh about it afterwards. Because I'm like, I'm actually the manager of all of the education programs now at this facility. And I love it because there's a lot of places we have GED programs. We have a number of things going on for people where we've introduced a new substance abuse program. We have people coming in doing the 12-step training, which is really, really powerful. There are a lot of people who are in lockup because of substance abuse issues, mostly using, so I really enjoy the work that I'm doing. And
Your work is just absolutely amazing and extremely holistic in that it touches the whole person and not just one particular part. So thank you for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you so much, Sylvia.
If there's one thought or one idea, one suggestion, one token of wisdom that you could share with the world, what would that be about wellness?
Wellness has so much to do with how we feel about ourselves. I met a naturopathic doctor who was an MD, naturopathic doctor in Washington, D.C. many years ago. And we actually he came to a presentation that I made, and I was so grateful that he came. So we went out to lunch, and I said, don't you sometimes just have the urge to have a piece of chocolate cake or, something like that? And he says, it's in those times that I ask myself why I'm not loving myself more. And I said, wow, that says it all. There's a line from a movie that I always encourage people to watch. It's called Eating, the Rave Diet. You may be familiar with it. And the line from that movie is that eating is the most popular form of unassisted suicide. Wow. We do it to ourselves. And that's not a judgment, it's just a fact that we do it to ourselves. So I encourage people, we Google everything, we look up information about everything we want to know. And sometimes we mention something about health and wellness, like, really? Well, what is that? And how do you? I'm like, you have a computer, you have a phone, Google it, look it up. I don't have to be explaining, I don't have to be hand-holding people who really want to know, who really want to make a change in their lives. People have come out of cancer, have come out of adult, onset type 2 diabetes, have come out of things where doctors had told them, you're going to be on medication the rest of your life, ching, 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 ching. And, that's all that we can do for you. And God bless them. I mean, the medical establishment, the allopathic society are very important. So we tell people, get the diagnosis, find out what's going on. They're going to give it a name, so take that name, but then look at things that you can do to change your own health outcomes. Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating too many starches? Are you eating too many processed foods, too much sugar, too much salt, the sodas and all of that stuff? Just pull back on that, make the healthier choices. So that's my thing, is about self-love and better choices in terms of what we're doing with our health. And so may I give a website?
Sure.
For people to healthyhaiku.com. That's healthy, HEALTHY, haiku, HAIKU.com, healthyhaiku.com. You can also find more of my work under Dr. Imani Ma'at.info. So it's DRIMANIMAAT.info. And I'd love to speak to people. They can find me on Facebook. They can find me on Twitter under Healthy Haiku. Let me see. Facebook is Healthy Haiku. Twitter is Healthy Haiku. And you can also email me at imanima'at@gmail.com or drimani@healthyhaiku.com. So there are lots of ways to reach me. I'm excited about this upcoming training. I'm only going to do it for like 10 people the first time, so they're going to get lots of hand-holding and attention and my time. So, please don't hesitate. My phone number is 404-702-4382. I have no problem taking calls. If it's a bad call, I'll just block you. So we always have that option, right? But thank you so much for the opportunity to share, Sandy.
And thank you.